Christian nationalists like Joel Penton and LifeWise Academy are like real-life versions of Terminators. They can't be reasoned with, and they will force themselves on public school children. We hear from two parents who decided enough was enough. And now they are subject to intimidation tactics by LifeWise that seem like they're copied from the mafia. And like all Christian nationalists, they kinda are. I'm Doug Berger, and this is Secular Left. Welcome to Secular Left, and I am Doug. I am your host. And on this episode, we're going to hear from two parents who are battling LifeWise Academy, which is an evangelical Christian nationalist group trying to force its way into public schools during the day. Not necessarily teaching the Bible in school during the day, but getting the kids off campus to take to a separate site to teach them Bible stories. And it's all perfectly constitutional, sort of. They are manipulating a state law in order to do it. And I've talked about LifeWise on at least three other episodes. And this is the first time that I've interviewed some parents who have been affected by LifeWise. And these parents, Zach and Molly, formed a group called Parents Against LifeWise in order to educate other parents about it, because this group, LifeWise, they like to fly under the radar and pop up. Their typical modus operandi is to go into lower income, lower informational school districts and get a foothold, and then they'll go then to the urban areas. And I really think it's important that people know about this group. It's connected to a couple of the groups that helped write the Project 2025 agenda that conservatives are foaming at the mouth to start using if a Republican administration gets elected in November. And so it's well funded, and the tactics that they use, in one instance, they had the Lieutenant Governor, John Husted, write a letter to a school board president to a school district that was hesitant to have a policy. So, they're pulling out all the stops because they want to get, first of all, they want to get your money. And the second one is then they want to convert your children. And I just think that the whole process is just totally Orwellian. But we'll let Zach and Molly tell it like it is. This interview was originally recorded for my other podcast, Glass City Humanist, and was published back in June. Since that episode was published, things have sped up a little bit. And Zach Parrish, one of the parents that we're going to hear from, was actually sued by LifeWise just this week, the week that we're recording this episode. And so at the end of the main episode, the main interview, I have about a 10 or 13 minute segment talking with Zach about the lawsuit that was just recorded this week. And so I hope you stay for that. So on with the show. My guest today is Zachary Parrish and Molly Gaines. They are co-founders of the parents group, Parents Against LifeWise. And I want to thank you both for being with us today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And for those that are unaware, the state of Ohio has a state law that's been on the books for about 10 years that school districts can have what's called release time religious education. And what that means is that with parental permission, a kid can go to a Bible class off campus. The law was originally put on the books to allow high school students to receive course credit if they went and went to Bible class at some church or somewhere. But now it's being manipulated and hijacked by a group called LifeWise, and they are an evangelical Christian group that's forcing school districts that have these policies to allow young elementary children to be taken off campus to attend a Bible class. And I think it's once a week, or is it once a month? I forget.
It's once a week.
Once a week?
Yep. And that's like per grade. Obviously, they do it K through elementary most places, but they also have a middle school and high school program that they're rolling out now as well.
And so LifeWise is well funded and has a lot of muscle behind it, a lot of state leadership and things like that. And Zach and Molly are parents who decided to push back against the rising tide of LifeWise, and they started Parents Against LifeWise. And they also work with other like-minded groups who are also against it. And so we'll go ahead and talk to them about it. And feel free to jump in and start answering a question if you want to answer it. And we'll try to change it up a little bit so not everybody's doing the same question. I guess I'll go with Molly then. How did you get introduced to LifeWise?
Actually, not to tell you how to do your job, but it would be better if you started with Zach, because he was the first parent on the ground, and it was his Reddit post that I found, and that was from years ago. Zach, you can tell more about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I was first introduced when my daughter was in second grade in 2001. And at open house, they sent home a letter, and the teacher described it to me at open house. But the thing is, they were putting her in a study hall in second grade, not attending LifeWise. The students would get put in the study hall. And even the handouts that they sent home, like the class schedules themselves, listed LifeWise as the class. Like, I've got 2 copies of that from both years when she was in second grade and in third grade. And that's really what got me started down the path. And then, like Molly said, I put a big post on Reddit, and it got quite a few hits, a lot of comments and a lot of views. People still hit me up about it to this day, asking where they can learn more and stuff. So yeah, that's what got me started. I reached out to the FFRF, and they sent a letter for me that first year. And, the school's lawyers sent their letter back and basically called me a liar. And that was pretty much the end of it, even though I have all the evidence still. I've got it all, but there's only so much those organizations are going to do, unfortunately.
And what year was that? Did that happen?
2001.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. 2021.
21. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
I don't think Joel Penton hadn't even invented it yet. So
no.
Okay.
Yeah, 21. I'm sorry.
And FFRF, was that the letter that they sent to all the school districts, or was that just for you?
No, they sent one for me personally to the district. Yeah.
And was that your similar experience, Molly, or that your kids brought something home? And
no. So my daughter, actually he's going through this in 2021, and he has a daughter that's in the school district at that time. I did not. My daughter was born in 2018, so that math is that she was too young. But at that particular moment, the end of 2021, I was leaving an abusive relationship, unfortunately. And the small town that I lived in with my child's father, they had already had LifeWise in place and were, on the social media accounts looking for donations, and word was getting spread around town. Again, it was a small town. And so that was the first time I had seen it. I started to see like the red bus and some, insidious things that were sort of concerning to me. And again, my daughter wasn't in school yet. So I was leaving that abusive relationship. I went half an hour towards more of a metro area to have more access to resources and to be closer to my mother. And it wasn't anywhere over here yet at all. And so that's when I sort of started looking and researching. And through that is how I found the Reddit post and just sort of reached out to Zach. I don't even remember exactly, but we connected and we're like, let's get some more eyes and ears on this. Like, what are we doing here? And the more we looked into it, the more concerning things got and the more it's grown.
Okay. And when did you form Parents Against LifeWise? It
was September of 2023.
And was that just the impetus that you both shared that experience, or there was other people that came forward and they were like, "Hey, let's have a group," or I mean,
So
what was the just how did it gestate?
sure, Zach, do you remember specifics? I just remember deciding that we should start the Facebook group.
Well, you had it started before you reached out to me
Yeah,
specifically because there were small local ones. There was two local ones that I was in, the
that's
Finley
it.
group, and then the other one, the Northwest Ohio one. Yeah, but I think we touched base in the Finley group, and as soon as I saw you just had a broad one, I jumped over, and as soon as I did, you asked me to just help with it. So
Yeah, I was like, can you get on board? Because when I'm looking at the timeline and I'm talking to everyone, I'm noticing like Zach, he's been through it. His daughter brought
my
home.
name definitely comes up when you look into it. I mean, I've been loud. I feel like I have to be, because people weren't aware of this. Nobody had any idea that was their plan from the beginning. They went into rural areas where, there's not a lot of people who are very Christian, and that's where they started. They put their hooks in there and figured out how to do it before going to the bigger cities.
Correct. Yeah, they made themselves get established in these places that were primarily white, primarily Christian, primarily conservative parts of Ohio specifically, because the pilot program started in Van Wert, and that is the hometown of the founder, the CEO, Joel Penton. So that is kind of the epicenter of what we're talking about. The new headquarters is going to be in Hilliard, but Van Wert is sort of where it all started.
Yeah, I remember when I was in school many, many, many moons ago, they actually, a lot of the rural schools had religious stuff on campus. Even though it was unconstitutional, people looked the other way. Somebody was reminding me the other day that this one school district in Hancock County, they had a church bus that parked in the parking lot. And the kids would come out and they would have stuff on the bus, it was like modified, it had tables and things like that. And then the bus would drive away. And people are shocked. And I'm like, yeah, that's what happens in rural Ohio.
Oh yeah,
Is people just
absolutely.
look the other way.
Yep. I mean, that's something we've seen specifically with LifeWise. I've seen them parking their bus over the weekends at the schools in two different school districts personally. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And they're using classrooms in the public schools to host luncheons. They're using, I shouldn't even say classrooms. They're using the facilities at public schools to host luncheons for volunteers and teachers. We have reports of them holding actual LifeWise classes at schools. But of course, this is in places again where the populations are lower. It's more rural. There's not going to be any pushback. If there is, it's going to be the minority, and those people are scared. So you're not going to hear much about it.
Yeah, and to make things clear, there is still a prohibition against having religious classes in public schools. And also this law that they're using, the release time law, specifically states that it can't be done on campus. It can't use resources. It can't use the teachers. But, we have these sporadic reports that that's what's going on.
They
And
absolutely push every boundary they can. I mean, that seems very intentional to me. They like to push the limits every way they can.
they will do whatever they want until they're told not to. And then they will like think about it, or they'll backpedal. And it's only usually temporary, or it's, until another junction comes and, whatever they're pushing session is or whatever. It's creating a dynamic in communities where anyone who is not the vocal minority or the vocal majority, religion wise, is afraid and is being ostracized, not just their children, but their families as well, even more so than before.
Yeah, and I know there was a recent bill that was introduced, House Bill 445, that would require school districts to have a policy. Right now, it's up to school districts if they have one. And one of the things, I come at it from a church-state separation angle, but there's other, I know there's some people that don't want to hassle religion or they think it's a hassle, and there's other reasons to be against it. Another reason to be against it is they have no requirements to do any background checks at all on anybody involved.
Yeah.
LifeWise claims that they do them,
Well,
but according to the law, they are not required to do any.
Zach, you take this one.
Yeah, I mean, we looked into their background checks. I specifically did one myself, and I definitely should not have passed, but I don't know that I did either. But the thing is, even the background check company is called Protect My Ministries. It's not a BCI check. It's not even remotely comparable to what teachers have to go through. Teachers get entered into a system called a wrap back, where as soon as they get a charge, it alerts the system. It doesn't even compare. To be honest, I don't even think it's a criminal background check. They call it a consumer report right there on the acknowledgement that you signed. So
checking their credit score, I guess.
I mean, for real, that's how it reads.
Yeah. And just to like give a little more detail to it, is that when Zach did go through their process of doing the background check, you know how typically when you get one, it tells you like, do you want a copy sent to you? There was no option for that.
Yep.
And see, he had to get the background check first in order, well, this is what they're saying, supposedly, in order to take the certification training, correct, Zach?
Yeah.
And so he was able to then take that training. So our assumption is that he passed the background check if he was given access to the training materials that he had to take the background check in order to get.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So, but
I
he
mean, to
never
be
got-
fair, that was probably an automatic thing. I mean, to be fair, it was probably an automatic thing that once I did the background check, some bot probably just let me into the training. But nonetheless, the fact is they didn't do a background check. I did the training and printed off a certificate. I can go buy a LifeWise shirt and start showing up at schools if I wanted to.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, and in this day and age of random school shootings and abuse, child abuse in the hands of teachers and administrators, and they're letting them take these kids off campus.
Honestly,
It's just mind-boggling.
it's horrifying. And and just to clarify, Zach was the team member who did submit himself to the background check, but that was because he, as a younger man, had some run-ins with the law. And nothing horrible by any means, but he should not have in any reality passed the background check that a teacher would have in order to get access to public school children. But that still is something where the proof is in the pudding. Like, if they're not going to stop someone like Zach with this level of things on his record, are they going to stop someone who has already committed offenses against children, who is already a predator? We don't know.
Hello, this is Doug, host of Secular Left, reminding you that I like to be validated. If you like this podcast and want to thank me, feel free to buy me a coffee. Go to buymeacoffee.com/secularleft and donate some cash to help make this a better show and validate me as a person. You'll feel better in the morning.
Yeah, and then the other thing that really should raise a red flag to any parent is that the school district isn't responsible for anything. Once they get approved, all they have to do is check attendance. That's all they're required to do.
That's a good point to bring up. So the thing we found out about the attendance is that the schools are supposed to be tracking the attendance, and they're not. We're finding out that we're getting a lot of back and forth. Like, the schools will say, well, LifeWise has that information. And then LifeWise is like, it's up to the schools to have that information. And there's no one tracking the attendance.
These are the answers we're getting with public records requests, just to be clear. I mean, this is official.
This is not hearsay. This is us going and specifically asking places where we know it is implemented and saying, we want the attendance records that you have to be keeping, and they will not give them. They cannot provide them, and I don't think they have them.
Yeah, that's one of the requests I made with the Findlay City School District was just enrollment. That's all I was asking.
Yep.
Was how many kids, and they've blown me off for 2 years now. Nothing.
Yep.
No acknowledgement, no denial, nothing.
We run into that a lot. Zach, I know, especially has run into that. Just full on silence.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't just have the FFRF. I also had the Ohio ACLU on them when she was in third grade, the year after that. After, the other organization didn't do as much as I was hoping they would, I got a hold of Ohio ACLU. And, it's exactly what it is. It's a lot of silence, and it's a lot of, well, that's not true. And that's the end of it, unfortunately.
And so there's no one to represent the children. And that's kind of where we come in. Minor children can only be represented by their parents. And right now, we're the only voice out there as a collective that says, hey, do you know this is going on? Do you have a problem with it? And giving the full information.
It's something you mentioned earlier, and I wanted to say the liability of any violation falls to the school. And I think that's a big point that schools need to be aware of. They actually are the ones who are held liable for any kind of violation that occurs, much less the fact that LifeWise isn't going to take the responsibility when it comes to these kids either. They're going to do what they can to push it off on the schools, I assume.
The school let them do it. That's
Right.
that's what it's going to come down to is, well, the school let us come in and we were trying to do a good thing and we were trying to do this, and it's going to cost the school money in the end of the day. But the permission slip, like I was, not only does it have that, it has a disclaimer that is very concerning. And we'll give you a copy of one of these, an example, but it also says very clearly that it's non-denominational. And I think that's something that we really need to touch on here, because it is not non-denominational. They're getting a lot of spread in Christian communities, and, well-meaning people are falling victim because they think that it's just innocent Bible school, like that used to happen in the old days, like old-fashioned innocent Bible school. And that is not what this is. They're getting their curriculum from the Gospel Project, which is published by Lifeway. That's the publishing house for the Southern Baptist Convention. I don't think we need to go over the Southern Baptist Convention, but basically it's bad times, bad news, hateful rhetoric. And so that's the sort of things that they're passing on to the kids. We have a specific document that that really illustrates this point, that says it's called How to Answer Difficult Questions from Students. Zach, that's correct, right?
Yeah, I have it pulled up.
Yeah. And it's got, there's a lot of concerning parts to it, to be honest with you. But Zach, will you point out a couple of them that I think people need to be aware of? And again, this is not a document that's going to be provided to a parent. It may not even be a document that's going to be provided to a school. It is a document that's going to be provided to a volunteer from LifeWise or to a teacher for LifeWise about how to handle sensitive subjects if a student should bring up a sensitive subject. Zach, do you have it that you can read some?
Yeah, I've got it pulled up here. I suppose the first thing that pops out is the family questions. How can I honor my parents, step-parents, grandparents, live-ins who do not follow God? We can't expect people who don't love God to follow him, but we should still be respectful toward them. When faced with a choice to obey God or our parents, we should always obey God first. I mean, that's pretty concerning to me. My mom's boyfriend lives with us. Is that a sin? My parents are divorced. Did they break God's rules? I mean, these are the kinds of questions. And then we have gender identity, sex questions. What would God think if I changed my gender? What does the Bible say about same-sex relationships? I mean, you know what these answers are.
Yeah.
But,
And
I mean, it's 2 pages of this, 3 pages of this.
Yeah. And if you don't know what those answers are, the sum of it is that, yes, all of those things are a sin. Your family's living in sin, and the price that you pay for sin is going to hell. I find some of the things especially disturbing as someone who, like I said, when I first heard of LifeWise, was escaping an abusive relationship. And that kind of rhetoric is, I can't explain to you how dangerous it is to tell a young girl that getting a divorce or that having a new boyfriend or a new man in her life is something to be ashamed of, or that is a sin. That only reinforces the issues that we have with, abused people staying in toxic and abusive relationships. And faith is a big reason why a lot of times that happens, because it's against their doctrine for them to leave, and no matter what. And that's, that's dangerous. That's how we end up with dead women.
Yeah, and that was the other red flag. I know I had mentioned about the religious aspect of it was the fact that it only follows their brand of Christianity, and it excludes Jewish people, it excludes Catholicism, it excludes Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yes,
It's very, very exclusive. It excludes a lot.
It's evangelical. I mean, just you can call it what it is. It's an evangelical doctrine.
It is 100%. I mean, their entire motto, their entire mission, business model, whatever you want to call it, is to reach unchurched children in public schools. So, I mean, just by definition, I mean, anyone who sort of knows kind of what we're dealing with Christian nationalism, who is keeping up with sort of the things that are concerning about homegrown terrorists, things like that. I mean, these are things that are very scary. And when they send a permission slip home that just says, this is non-denominational, character building Bible class.
Yeah. Character education is, they love to lean on that.
Character education. And, the most not the most concerning part. I just keep saying that because all the parts are so concerning, but they are targeting places like we said, rural. Some of these places are lower income. Some of these places have fewer resources, things like that. And so they're already entering a place where things like that are going to be more accepted, if that makes sense. And so it's normal and it's reinforcing these damaging ideas.
Yeah, I got introduced to Joel Penton because I was doing some research on his fake character building motivational speeches that he does, where he talks a school and to bring him in.
Yep.
And they have a mandatory assembly where he speaks about building character and obeying your parents and blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, he says, hey, if you like this, here's another part tonight at a local church, or it might be in the building that they just had that assembly. And then that's when he proselytizes to them.
Absolutely. Well, at least my understanding, and Zach, absolutely interrupt me if I'm wrong, or if you interrupt me anyway. But he basically, he goes in, he structures it as a motivational speech. Okay. And I think what you're speaking of is his Stand Your Ground.
Right. Or stand for truth. Ministries.
Stand for Truth is the name of the Inc. Okay. That's what their 990 say. But it all started sort of with this book that he wrote. And I don't know what came first, the book or the motivational speaking. Zach, to you?
I don't know.
But so in 2010, he wrote a book called Stand Your Ground. I happen to have it. I bought it 2 times used. He didn't get any money from me. And so the interesting thing about Stand Your Ground is that I haven't noticed I've skimmed it. I've read most of it, not all of it. So admittedly, it could be in here and I don't know, but it does not say anything specifically very much about religion. So what he's doing is he's towing the line with these children in these assemblies right up to the edge. And he's saying, stand your ground, keep your convictions. What matters to you is important, things like that. Okay. Which is awesome when it's taken out of context. But when you start to add religion into it, and like the authoritative issues we have within, religious organizations and churches, then you can sort of see what the real message is. And I think the other interesting thing about this book is we have it on good authority, like very good authority, someone who graduated school with Joel, that this is entirely fabricated. That the entire premise of the book is that he had to stand his ground, and I'm about Jesus, about his faith, and that the entire school, even his friends, turned their back on him. And it was the worst moment of his life, and he was ostracized and all of this. But then, of course, at the end, this paid off, and this is his dream, and his dream come true, and he stood his ground, and that's what made him a man, and just, these sort of things. But there's so much detail in this book. I know a couple of people that have read it, and the person who went to school with him who said there's no way that these things could have happened and no one know about it. Like the way he writes it is that like it's the whole school, like a Footloose situation, that like the whole school, the whole town, everyone knows about this.
That
thing.
was Van Wert?
Yes.
Was it Van Wert? Really?
Yes.
That to me, that says that's made up right there.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Exactly. And that's why we're all like, what? And the people that I've talked to who went to school with them or what have you, or their kids went to school with them, they're like, they've never heard of that. That should be in fiction, but it is an autobiographical book. That's what's touted at. And you see the timeline is very funny too, because you've got 2010, he's motivational speaking, grifting schools, making money, got a book to sell too, doesn't he? 2011, he writes another book because he's got to keep going. This one's called 7 Lies Almost Every Teen Believes. It was written in 2011. Okay. So that's a year. That's wild. And this one is very religious. It is so religious. It's insane. This is something that you would almost have to go. We have snippets of it we can share with you and you can share with your audience. But this is almost something that you would have to read to get the big picture of. But really it's brainwashing for children. It's a teen guide for brainwashing for evangelical Christians. And you have this in 2011. You see him continue. He's a full-time minister. He doesn't like to say that or advertise that, but for 13 years, he was a full-time minister, get in that gap. And then come 2023, I don't have a copy of it, unfortunately. 2023 in May, he's publishing a book called During School Hours. And it is about LifeWise Academy and how he's implemented that into, the schools and the process.
And how you can too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how he borrowed it from his sister, I believe it was. His sister was on the board of the church that was doing it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Zach.
Well, there's a whole bunch of details there that seem to be a little foggy and a little shady, but I don't want to get too far into them because we're not entirely sure. But yeah, I mean, there was a program in Van Wert that he kind of went in there and said, how can we do this everywhere? The quote out of his book is, I need to McDonald's this thing or something to that effect, which it's ironic that that's the colors they chose as well. I mean, they're very much McDonald's colors that they're using. He's playing that manipulative, game.
For more information about any of the topics covered in this episode, check out our show notes at secularleft.us.
First, they garner 50 signatures from within your community. We tested that theory, and turns out they don't care where those signatures come from. They don't care about what the email says. They don't care what the email is. They don't care about the name. They don't care about any of that. What they're going to do is they're going to keep sending you emails when you sign their petition that say, thanks for signing our petition. So, and we went and checked, and there's, if you join our Facebook group, or, we can provide you some screenshots, Doug. But basically it'll show you the count. If you need 50 signatures, there would be 50 of them or 45. And then when we would do this test, there would be 56. There would be one more. There would be one more. So it was actively keeping count of just every email that got plugged into the petition, the website. And then again, the emails were getting multiple. Didn't we use the same email twice?
Yep. I used the same email to sign 2 different lists, and it didn't stop it or red flag it. It doesn't matter.
2 different lists in 2 different communities that Zach has nothing to do with, just to be clear. Yep. So they say that these are communities of interested people within your community. No, they could be signatures from anywhere. This could be one person with access to 50 emails. This could be a church leader with his roster. This could be.
They also don't share it. I mean, that's the other thing. I don't believe that they share this list with anybody.
No.
So, they just go into the district and they say, hey, everybody wants it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. We had 150 signatures. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants it.
That's the other thing too. They start at 50 and then it becomes, we need 100, they just keep upping it. So,
and then eventually from signatures, it goes from signatures to donations, because this is structured like an MLM. It's everyone at the bottom is begging for money, looking for donations from the community, doing, fundraising, selling merch. I mean, they got their own coffee brand. They have t-shirts and polos and water bottles and everything you can think of. So there's a lot of money grabbing going on at the community levels. And then you see them, they're paying not very much, by the way. They're paid employees, because isn't there usually at least one paid employee in a community, Zach?
Yeah. The lead teacher, and I think some of the teachers as well. It just depends. Yeah.
Yeah. Or there might be a director. Depends on how big the community is, or how many schools are in the school district.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they've got the program directors, and then they have a little board and stuff. I mean, that's the thing. There's 7 steps, 8 steps. They have them all broke down in PDFs, what you need to do and how you can email the schools and how you can get more interest in your community. And it's all just templates. I mean, it really is. It's just templates of send this out to everybody. It's kind of crazy.
It is. And, and you pay them so much. Isn't it, Zach, you either have to keep your numbers up. You have to keep your numbers up, and then like you have to have so much money to start the program. And if you aren't successful, that money gets forfeited to LifeWise. Like you don't have a program, and then you also don't have the startup money.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and then it's like I read somewhere it was like $20 or $30 a kid for liability insurance.
Yeah, and that was something we didn't see till later on. Zach, would you agree with that? Like I didn't see a mention of that until later. And I almost wonder if that was an afterthought sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
The communities are the ones that are doing most of the small time fundraising. But I think the other thing that is important to discuss about LifeWise is the affiliations they have and who's donating to them directly. They've got some very upsetting people that they're affiliated with that have spoken about them, who have said, this is awesome, that have promoted them on their programs. Pack Mobile. Do we know what that is? That's the right-wing extremist company. Sure, you can do your own research. They've got we found at least 2 promotions from Project 25 that have said LifeWise is where it's at. You need to get this in your community. It's the best thing since sliced bread. So and Project 25, we don't have the time to go and do that here, but you can do your own research. It is terrifying. If Doug, you probably know more about that than I do, in all honesty, but for them to be affiliated with that in any way, shape, or form, and then also affiliated with our children is something that keeps me up at night.
Well, I don't know if you probably didn't tell me before, but didn't somebody read in his book that his goal is to tear down the public school system? Or was that something he said in a podcast or something? I know he's been quoted as saying that his mission is to tear down Joel Penton's mission is to tear down the public school system and reconstitute it as a Christian school.
I mean, he's said things to that effect in podcasts for sure. That question's been brought up in podcasts, to that effect. I don't know the exact quote, but yeah. It's also interesting that his kids are all homeschooled,
Yeah, of
Our
course.
public schools aren't good enough for Joel's kids.
Right, because it's a cesspool, or it's his mission field. That's what he calls it.
Yep, that's
his mission.
And I think that's the point that needs to be made, is how this is so much different than every other RTRI program up until then. These other programs have been running for years without trying to convert the children. That's the big difference here. And right. I think that point needs to be made. They stand behind these Supreme Court cases, and they only stand behind half of them. They only point out the little bits and snippets that work for them. There's plenty of other things you can pull out of this Supreme Court case law, because that's all it is that they're working from. It's a lot of weeds once you start getting into it.
Yeah, when Representative Click introduced 445 in his proponent testimony, he claimed that it was a First Amendment issue about religious freedom. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's total poppycock. Mm-hmm. It is not. If a school district doesn't want to have LifeWise, that should be up to the school district. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't violate anybody's religious freedom. It really doesn't.
No, because these other programs were traditionally meant for like minority faiths and for public school children who didn't have the resources or the financial resources specifically to be afforded a private religious education, which used to be the only option in this country. You had to pay for a private religious education if you wanted that for your child. That is no longer the case, especially in Ohio. Now we're up against vouchers. We're up against charter schools. We're up against all kinds of things that are an alternative to public school. So if your day-to-day, if your religion is so important that you need your child to have it during their day-to-day, during the school week, then there's no excuse why you shouldn't be able to send them to a school without any financial burden on yourself or your family. And therefore it shouldn't be in our public schools.
Now, the only counter I would have to that is that many of the rural areas of Ohio do not have a private school. And that was one of the knocks about this so-called universal voucher system that we have in Ohio now, is it doesn't help kids really that much in rural communities.
No, and we'd have to check. That's something that I've delved into a little bit on the sides here and there as it concerns with LifeWise. But I think there's also like a transportation budget built into that though. So like there's money that they're getting to be able to get their kids in rural areas to a private school in a less rural area. So again, if it's that important, if it's something that is so important to your family that your child can't go without it until a weekend or an after school or before school situation.
I don't even feel like it falls into that category though. I mean, that's the other thing. I don't feel like this program is designed for people who want the religious upbringing for their children. I mean, that's not what it's designed for. It's apples to oranges when you compare it to that.
It is true, because Parents Against LifeWise, we've said from day one, like we are not anti-RTRI. That's the 52 Supreme Court decision. The RTRIs, religious release time instruction. And we're not against that, okay? Because it has existed for years and years with no issues. Because these other religions, the minority ones, they aren't hinged on proselytizing. They aren't, there is no mission field. They're not sending the kids back to school with treats and prizes and stories and enticements. These kids are, leaving early at the end of the day to go to temple, and nobody else cares. You know what I mean? Like this is just, it's never been an ordeal before. And now it's become one. It's creating these imaginary hierarchies within the elementary schools. It has kids crying and not being able to sleep at night because they're worried about going to hell. Parents upset because they can't say anything at the school because they're outnumbered. I mean, it's mess after mess after mess. And
then they have their fake research that says kids do better when they attend Bible class.
Yep.
That they paid for.
Yep.
Yeah. Paid for study.
It's interesting. It's interesting if you start digging into the laws a little bit. My opinion is the reason they have that is because one of the things they stand behind in the law is that the school can push a program like this if there's a secular benefit. Like that's something that, they allow more, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. They allow more leeway if you can say there's secular benefit to this.
Like our attendance is going up, our bullying is reduced, our incidents, they call it, what do they call it? Sometimes they call them like incidences or situations. There's always a code word, and basically it's for kids getting in trouble. It's disciplinary action stuff. And so they're saying that there's less of this, less of that. But that's not what we're hearing. That's not what parents are coming and saying to us. That's not what the testimony says. That's not the experience on the ground. It's what they want people to think is happening, and what they're paying for people to think is happening.
All right. And as I said, you have this group, Parents Against LifeWise. What specific things is your group doing at this time?
I think our biggest thing is spreading awareness and information. That's kind of always been the main tenet and goal as far as me and Molly. We have definitely worked with different groups like the ACLU and Freedom from Religion.
Honesty for Ohio Education.
Yep. I mean, we're collecting testimony from parents and really just trying to be there as a support system, because when I started dealing with, there was none. There was no information about this program. I had nowhere to turn, no one to talk to. And we just kind of want to be there and be that for other parents, help raise awareness, get people to know. I mean, that's our thing, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's important that there be counters to the people that want to do this, and that you stick up for your kids and other people's kids. And the fact that they exclude all these other religions, there's over 4,000 world religions in this world. They can't have Bible class for all of those religions. There's just no possible way. So they're going to have to pick and choose, and they can't, because that's a First Amendment violation if they pick and choose.
And I think another really valid point to bring up is when they claim that this is character education for this class, that we don't have a character education curriculum for our children. I mean, that there is the discrimination. Our kids aren't being instructed this curriculum like that group of kids is.
Well, in fact, during I think it was either Reagan or Bush, they actually got rid of that stuff. because it was liberal. You were indoctrinating kids on liberalism. So they got rid of it. They demonized it like they did CRT.
Right.
And they stopped it.
Any other mention of SEL, social emotional learning, these people, they would be screaming about it because it's indoctrination. But this is the hypocrisy that they're also using that system.
Yeah, they ironically have internal, we've seen documents that they've provided that basically say
they mimic the Ohio standards, to be honest with you, because you can pull the Ohio SEL standards up and it is almost verbatim. Oh, our program does this almost exactly as the Ohio standards state.
And at one time they had even said, they had actually said that we use SEL, policies, procedures, whatever. They had said that. And it was causing so much concern and controversy for their organization that they were like, we need to get rid of this, So it's just deceitful all the way around. It's just, we keep finding more deceitful things. And Zach brought up a really good point. Not only are our kids not getting the SEL or the same quality education, but we have reports of no new instruction time, no new instruction classes, where basically if the majority, or I don't even know if it's a majority, but the kids that go, they go to LifeWise, and the kids that stay, instead of actually doing coursework or being taught or, doing what they should
do busy work. They do busy work.
They do busy work where there's no new instruction. That's what they mean. So that the LifeWise kids aren't missing anything, even though it is very clear in the ORC and in the Supreme Court decision that those kids, their parents, whoever are responsible for the work that they miss when they go off school property to do.
Well, that's the accommodation. I mean, that's part of the school endorsement, is that they're accommodating this by taking that time away from our children as well.
Exactly.
Or they're doing it like Anthony Wayne schools. They're going to do it during lunch and recess.
Yeah.
That's
to overcome that obstacle, as they called it.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, I think it's important to note that is their second option. That is their backup plan. They do not want to come to your district and be there during school and recess.
They fight that really hard.
Tooth and nail. At some points, they've even said, well, we'll leave. They've told districts, well, we'll leave if you don't accommodate, us. But what these kids are leaving during is, what is, I would argue with this term, but considered non-core curriculum. So their specials classes that's what they're called in some areas, which is PE, music, art, library time, tech, things like that. These are on rotation in a lot of schools. And so they will rotate missing one of these important classes or instructions in order to go. And the children that aren't opting in, or whose parents won't opt them in, they're what? Not getting these things, not going to these
classes? Because the specials are twice a week. Like the kids that don't go get that special twice a week. It's not like the other kids are missing the class entirely. Right. They go 1 week, and my daughter goes 2 days a week. She has art class twice a week now, but they don't do anything new. Like she was saying, no new instruction during that second day while all the other kids are at LifeWise.
No, we have teachers who have said basically look, think about it. How would we do that? How would we keep on track of a curriculum and of a lesson plan when there's all this staggering? How would we know where to stop and start and who knows what and who remembers what? There's no way to keep track of that when you've got half or more of the class that's missing so much and the other half that has kept learning. Then you're either going back over things the other kids have learned, which we all know what happens to bored kids. But so you've got the other half of the class who has, no idea what's going on. It's all new to them, so it's just creates this weird scheduling disparity that the teachers are, honestly, they're having a really hard time dealing with. And I would say across the board, we've heard nothing but teachers say that this is bad. It's bad in practice. It's bad every day. It's bad.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that can help immensely is if we could find some teachers that will go on the record about some of this stuff, because I know a lot of them won't.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah,
they're scared to lose their jobs,
right?
And with good reason in some areas. In other areas, maybe not, but we can understand why they would be concerned, because in a lot of places, in most places, this is being pushed by someone who maybe leads the PTA, or by their school board even, or by a church leader in the community who is the, authority on these such things. The consequences for them are too big, is what we're finding so far. But again, we're a little behind, but we're not that behind. They are spreading out from the pilot program in Van Wert like a disease, just spreading out from Ohio. And so we're getting more reports. They're getting more opportunities to mess up, if that makes any sense. And so we're bound to hear more, and we're bound to are they in Toledo public schools or Columbus City schools? They're going to metro areas because it's very obvious to me anyway that
they've got all of Ohio at this point. I mean, for the most part, they've got almost all of Ohio.
Well, it's to me, this is what I think. Zach, you tell me if you think I'm right, but it's rural Christian white communities, as we discussed before.
They've definitely made their mark in the big cities as well at this point.
Well, then they go in to the metro area, which again, historically has some poverty issues maybe, or resources that are lower, or their education is overwhelmed by the amount of students. There's some issue, right? So they go directly there, they get their foothold in there. And then like in Ohio right now, we're seeing it in the suburbs. And that's where they're getting the most pushback, because those people have the time and the money and the resources to look into what is exactly going on. And that is not the case for people who are struggling that maybe live in a more rural area. And don't get me wrong, we're not stereotyping. We know that these are not always the case, that this is not always, that people in rural areas are Christian, white, or low income. And we know that the same is true for metro areas. But historically speaking, that is what they're doing, is they're preying on these areas that are saying, oh, you're going to come in here and you're going to offer character education to these children who are struggling for free. Yes, we'll do it. We'll do anything you want to do if you say it's going to help, because we're struggling that hard. That's what they're doing. And so now in Ohio specifically, and Ohio, we keep talking about Ohio, it's national. Okay. It's in how many states by now?
20 something.
20.
Is it 20 now?
I think I could have that number wrong, but they just had their State of the Ministry address yesterday, and I want to say it was 20. Yeah, because he said it'll be 25 by 2025. Yeah.
So they're, it's spreading outward, but Ohio is a really good micro examination of how they're doing things, because like I said, in some ways, all the states, we know that people in general are all the same. So there's a lot of consistencies. And so in Ohio, we've seen it. We're seeing it happen in real life. They've had years to do it. And now that they're established, they're doing it even faster in other states. So again, rural Christian first, go into the metro, the suburbs, and the more affluent neighborhoods that are more diverse and things like that. Those are the last places. And that's where they see the most opposition, but that's the last place. And by that time, a lot of times we're seeing, there's been a House bill of some sort that's been passed to force them to have an RTI policy, an RTRI policy, like we talked about with HB 445. Indiana already has that
one. Yeah.
They just passed it. I think talking about their spread, this is probably a good time to bring up the website, respectpublicschools.com. There's an interactive map on there that shows, the growth they've had just in the past 2-3 months has been huge. But you can go on to respectpublicschools.com and get an interactive map and see what stage they're at in your city. And that's nationwide.
Nationwide. You can type in your school district name. That's what you need to know, is whatever school district you're concerned about. Which sometimes our school districts don't always match the name of the cities we live in. So find out that information accurately and go in there, and the map will show you what level. We spoke about how there's 10 steps for them to get implemented into the district. It'll show you what step that your school district is currently on.
Well, Zach and Molly, it was really great to talk to you today about this important issue. This is a very, very important issue that people need to take heed. They need to pay attention. And if they have kids in school, they need to keep up on it, because, they're manipulating everything that they can. They're being as sneaky about it as they can. If people want to get involved with Parents Against LifeWise, how do they get in touch with you?
They can email us at parents.against.lifewise@gmail.com, or just get on the Facebook group. That's really the best way. Search Parents Against LifeWise on Facebook. That's probably going to be the best way. We're working on a website. It's not live yet, but we're working on that. So hopefully we'll have that up and running soon. But
That's going to have a ton of useful information on it, on how to mount your own fight if you're looking to fight, on just the history of it, on where they're headed. Maybe there's just going to be a lot of information. And again, you can always join our community. We have both a public page on Facebook and a private group. And there's a lot of information within the private group and a lot of supportive people there that may be in your area and be looking to find other people that want to, provide an opposition to this.
Yeah, I just got added today, and I noticed there were several people that I personally know that I did not know was in that group. So
we've grown a lot really quick. I'm glad to see it. Like I said, I've been talking about this and trying to help people for 3 years now, and this is the most momentum that I've seen by a long shot.
Yeah. And we're not, like I said, we're not anti-religion by any means. I wouldn't say that we support RTRI laws, because to us, school day is precious. Those minutes are precious. There's no time for any religion in a public school day. But for minority faiths, for people who need it, special circumstances, of course, absolutely. We're supportive of that, of a diversity of any sort. And we always make a point to say that we're not anti-religion at all. Our movement is not about religion bashing. It's not about being an atheist or an agnostic or anything like that. We have lots of clergy members. We have religious leaders within the group. We have, housewives and scientists and teachers and everything you can think of. And we want everyone to know, because we said, even though our group is called Parents Against LifeWise, parents is just a word we used because of the strength that it contains. Anyone is welcome. Anyone who pays taxes, anyone who's a member of the community, anyone who cares about what's going on in their school that they, contribute to, that their children go to, or that their grandchildren go to, they need to know what's going on.
All right. Thank you very much, Zach and Molly. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. We appreciate you.
This is Secular Left.
All right. So the interview you just witnessed was recorded a couple months ago. And since that time, there has been an update. And I'm joined here with Zach Parrish, who was in part of the original interview. And what we're going to talk about today is that Zach decided to put up on the internet the entire curriculum that LifeWise uses. This is the curriculum that they have to spend money on. It's part of the Gospel Project. And I looked it up, and it retails for per student something like $1,500 a year. And so Zach got access to it, and we'll talk more about that, and published it on the internet, put it up on the internet. And LifeWise is now suing him for at least $150,000 and as a copyright infringement claim. And so thank you for joining me today on this little extra part of the interview. Zach, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Now, the first thing that we want to clear the air about is that you did not get that material illegally. Is that correct?
No, not by any means. Nope. All I did was go through some Google links and type some different URLs in. They've accused me of using brute force slug attacks. I don't even know what that is. They've accused me of using their source code in different reports. Literally, the only thing I did was go to www.whatever/ and then change that backslash to access the different videos. That's how I accessed the training. The curriculum itself, once I accessed the training, it was super easy because they have videos showing you how to access it. They say that they only grant teachers access after they say they only grant paid teachers access. But all I did was type in a universal password and I was granted access. There was no login whatsoever to get that curriculum.
So basically, in order for them to dumb down their system for just anybody to access it, you were able to access it.
Yeah. And through no software or any means like that. I mean, they're literally trying to make it sound like I'm a hacker, and I don't even know how to do that type of stuff.
And also, to be clear too, that they also filed a police report about it and nothing came of it, correct?
Right, correct. Yeah, the police report ended with, "We don't know if he committed a crime. We don't understand really." I mean, that's the synapse of the police report. Yeah.
Yeah, and they did the same thing to the gentleman from Tiffin that has the website too. They accused him of hacking their system, and all he did was just normal everyday internet tools, and their website was not secure.
Right.
For the information that they wanted.
They not only accused him of hacking, they actually threatened felony charges in his cease and desist, which is not legal. You're not supposed to threaten criminal charges in a civil cease and desist. For their lawyers to do that is just unthinkable, but they did,
So when you were notified about this lawsuit, how did you feel?
I mean, I knew it was coming. It wasn't a shock to me at all. I feel like I'm in the right, that's for sure. And the attorneys that I've talked to all seem to think I have a pretty decent case. There are definitely different options we can take that we've been talking about. So,
yeah, I mean, I've never heard of a copyright infringement case coming from a third party. Usually, it's the creator of the material that's supposed to sue.
Right, and that's a good point you bring up, because I'm not sure about the legal details of it, but again, some of the lawyers that I've talked to have made it seem like they're not the owners. It's they own a right to derivative work, is how the agreement is written, and that's how it's read. So that is part of what my lawyers have been discussing. Not my lawyers, I haven't paid for one yet, but that's the people that I've talked to. Yeah, they've said that they don't even know if they have the right to make this claim against me.
And also, to be clear too, you did not post this information to resell it, correct? You weren't trying to undermine their business.
No, I haven't made a dime off of it. That's their claim to damages. It's so ridiculous. What they're saying is that somebody who wants to start a LifeWise program might come to my website designed specifically in opposition and download the curriculum to avoid paying their licensing fee through LifeWise. That's so absurd. If you think your Christians that are working for you are going to come steal from you, maybe you should think about what you're doing. I mean, the reason is parents need to be able to review this. They won't share this curriculum with anybody, not with parents, not with school boards, not with other clergy members of different churches. If they're coming into our public schools and asking to remove these kids, they should have to meet the same standards of transparency.
When LifeWise has been asked to show their curriculum to parents before a program was established, they've refused, correct?
They offer a 27-page sample, which is also noted in the complaint, that they don't not offer it. They don't let people review it. They let them review 27 pages out of a 12-year curriculum. So, yeah.
And if you could you describe some of the information that's available in that curriculum? Off the top of your head.
It's basic religious stuff. I don't want to get into dragging down the stories and the parables individually, but it's the basic religious stuff. I mean, you're talking about Sodom and Gomorrah. You're talking about the Book of Ruth, which is just about being submissive as a woman. In my view of that, it's one of the worst books that they talk about is Ruth. You've got references to marriage being only between a man and a woman in the lessons, that type of thing. It's the undertones of it. It's the interpretation of it and how it's being taught. That's really the issue with it.
So basically, it's just cherry-picked Bible stories, and so I just find it hard to believe that they would claim a copyright on the Holy Bible.
Right, and
I don't understand.
The materials, they have videos. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is that they had little YouTube videos that they made, but yeah, it's still just telling these Bible stories.
So they are trying to make a profit off of the Holy Bible.
Well, they're not trying. They are making a profit.
Yeah, they are.
Very large profit. Right. Yeah.
And are you aware, how much do they charge a local program for the access to the curriculum? Do you happen to know?
That's a good question. I do not know, because it's not like it's specifically invoiced or billed. It is just part of the initial startup costs that these programs have. It's not like it's a special charge that they list separately. So I don't know what they charge for it.
And what is the usual startup charge, or the typical startup charge?
I don't want to say off the top of my head and get it wrong. I want to say $3,000, but I could be wrong.
Okay. So this organization, LifeWise, that since 2017 has received 56 grants totaling almost $4 million, is charging local groups thousands of dollars to access Bible stories.
And asking these local groups to raise their own money. I mean, that's the other part of it. All of the local money comes from local donations. They're entirely responsible for paying for the merchandise, for the marketing, for the transportation fees. They have to pay for everything at the local level.
And those payments go to the headquarters, correct?
Correct. Well, I think they put it in a fund. You know, you have a debit card to make purchases with of some of it, type of thing. Yeah.
So this lawsuit, you haven't, there hasn't been any hearings about it or anything. You've just been served with it.
Yes, that's correct.
Did it set a court? Has there been a court date set or anything? Do you know?
Well, federal court is different than regular court. This is a brand new experience for me, so I didn't know how it works. After they serve me, I have 28 days to submit a response to that. I guess that's the equivalent of pleading guilty or not guilty, but it's all done through paperwork at the federal level, I guess. So I have 28 days since Monday.
And is it you're obviously you're expecting it to cost you money to defend yourself, correct?
Oh yeah, it's going to cost a bare minimum of $10,000 just to even try to get a dismissal. LifeWise very much wants me to settle. They have said it in emails. They have said it in media requests. They requested a jury trial in the paperwork, but they're also just willingly offering to settle. I have no desire to settle. I'm not going to. We can get it dismissed, or I can defend myself and we can fight it. But I'm not going to settle because I don't believe I've done anything wrong.
Have they suggested what it would be to settle it?
No, I imagine I imagine it would be for me to shut up and take the material down. And I'm not going to take that material down until the court orders me to do so.
And if somebody wants to help you with your legal fees, how would one go about doing that?
We do have a GoFundMe page. You can just look up Stand with Parents Against LifeWise on GoFundMe. I'm not sure what the link exactly is. I can provide it to you if you want to put it in the description or whatever.
Well, there's a link on your website too.
Yes, so yeah, it is. Yeah, that's right.
Parents Against Web.
But it's not updated that website so much in the past week.
And also, how's the reaction been in general to you and to the lawsuit?
I have been so humbled. I can't even express like how grateful I am. I really didn't expect this outcry from the public. Like there's been such an outcry of support, and I knew there would be in closed circles. Like I expected it from inside of the group, but even when this is being discussed publicly, everybody is very much in my corner, and it just amazes me. The group itself has more than doubled in a week. So every news article, the media, they're talking about it. People are paying attention now. And that's why I started this whole process, was to make people aware of what was going on and give them a chance to fight back and be knowledgeable about the subject.
Yeah. And it's probably it's definitely not the only PR disaster LifeWise has happened. We just found out today that one of their school directors was fired because they had a sexual indiscretion at a school that they worked at as a teacher.
Not just an indiscretion. Not just an indiscretion. They sent nudes allegedly to a student.
Right. Yeah. But imagine that did not get caught until now.
Well, I find it hard to believe that it didn't get caught when we have a comment that LifeWise deleted of LifeWise defending this person. They were aware of the not charges. They were aware of the allegations and weren't out there defending her until they deleted the comment. So it's not that they were unaware, it doesn't seem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, according to the news report I read today, she was announced in April, and then they said that they heard about it and then put her on administrative leave and investigated.
Last night. They heard about it last night when it broke, yes.
So, and that's one of the things that people have been talking about is and of course, to kind of throw LifeWise a bone. Yeah. When you don't do a real record check, you're going to miss stuff like that, because they said the school district sent a letter to the state. So it would have been on her teaching license file.
Yep. She
wouldn't be able to be a teacher anywhere in the state of Ohio. And
that look for that though.
Yeah,
I mean, her license was not just revoked; she was barred from getting it again. I mean, that's a second step. Those are two different things. You can get it revoked and get it back in some scenarios. Mm-hmm. She got it revoked and was barred from getting it again.
Right, and so I I'm with you. I think people like that should not be part of the LifeWise programs.
I don't want them around my kids.
Right. If you can't be paid by a school district to work with kids, you shouldn't be able to volunteer to work with kids.
Nope.
Well, it was great catching up with you, Zach, about this this situation, and I know at least personally, I pulling for you, and I really think that the lawsuit is they're just trying to drag you because they just don't like you.
And that's one of the angles we're looking at as far as defense too, is trying an anti-SLAPP angle, because this doesn't seem like a winnable lawsuit for them. If that's the case, then that makes it a SLAPP lawsuit, and it's just a whole different ball-game then. So I'm weighing my options to see what we can do.
Yeah, and Ohio just passed a law that outlaws slapping. So
I'm in Indiana, unfortunately. They didn't file it in Indiana. But
they did file it in Indiana?
There's similar laws here from when I was talking to the attorneys. So I'm really glad you have me on again. So you've been really supportive in all this the whole time. So I just want to thank you for that.
Well, thanks a lot, Zach, and good luck on your court case.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode. You can check out more information, including links to sources used, in our show notes on our website at secularleft.us. Secular Left is hosted, written, and produced by Doug Berger, and he is solely responsible for the content. Send us your comments, either using the contact form on the website or by sending us a note at comments@secularleft.us. Our theme music is Dank and Nasty, composed using Amplify Studio. See you next time.